So, apparently the ending was not the only bad thing about My Hero Academia. Hello, I'm Safa and I only found out about this from the Chinese app called Xiaohongshu, or Red Note in English. Granted, I didn't know about it before because a friend told me, but Red Note is what really got me to look into it more in depth. Now, you're wondering, Safa, what is this about? How did My Hero Academia screw up more than making Bakudeku not happen? Let me take you back to 2020, where the mad scientist character Daruma was revealed, and his name is Marta Shiga. Though his name changed later because of frankly deserved backlash. To provide some context, let's take a look at World War II. Yes, this is going to be a history lesson in a video about My Fucking Hero Academia. Now, if you are American or European, you likely haven't heard about Japan's side of the war, or at least you haven't heard about it in depth. I mean, after all, we mainly do learn about Hitler. But unlike Germany, Japan did not apologize or even acknowledge its genocidal past or its war crimes. In fact, it is completely erased in Japan's retelling of the history, effectively painting themselves as victims of nuclear warfare while also erasing their own war crimes. Insult to injury, they honor those war criminals at the Yasukuni Shrine as heroes. Part of the war crimes is Unit 731, which went on from 1963 to 1954, also known as the Kamo Detachment and the Ishii Unit. Roughly 14,000 victims were murdered and at least 300,000 died from an illness caused by the unit. The people in the unit were mostly Chinese people. There were also a few Koreans and Russians as well. Those would consist of men, women, children, and also babies who came to be because of the rape committed by the staff. Maruta was the name that perpetrators used to refer to them, like basically a dehumanizing nickname, as Maruta means log. So basically, they dehumanized the victims while performing those experiments on them. They were also infected with diseases disguised as vaccinations, and that's where Shiga comes in. So that comes from the Shigella bacteria, which is named after Kiyoshi Shiga, and this is in fact also a bacteria that has been used in these experiments. I think you can now understand why naming a character Maruta Shiga is a terrible decision, and it is basically the equivalent of a German person naming a character Auschwitz. Like, Hori has also never bothered to meaningfully apologize for his reference. He, as well as most My Hero Academia fans, were insisting that it is an accident. I too have believed this for quite a while because of this, but honestly, the more research I do on this, the less I am buying this. Horikoshi is very clever and mindful about the names he chooses, and he pays close attention to the meaning and quirk behind them. You don't accidentally name a mad scientist after a war crime. Even if we go with the idea that it was an accident, though, Chinese people still have the right to be upset about it. Well, personally, I think that banning it is a bit too far, as I think that censorship is never the answer. I do understand why they hate the series so much, and I definitely think that invalidating their upset and posting My Hero Academia content on Chinese platforms out of spite is a really messed up thing to do, especially with the aforementioned context. But of course, My Hero Academia fans are not beating the toxic fandom allegations. The name change isn't better either, actually. Kyudai is a shortened version of Kyushu University, which is where they did experiments on American soldiers. So yeah, do with that information what you will. Anyway, this is where I am going to end this video. I'm sorry that this video is a bit more serious than my usual stuff. I did feel the need to talk about it. It's pretty important, and I do think that people outside of Red Note should also know about this. I was debating whether to put a trigger warning in this video or not, and ultimately I decided against it because this is really something that more people should be knowing about, especially my academia fans. If you were made uncomfortable hearing about Unit 731, imagine how the victims felt going through it, or their families for losing their relatives to it. And imagine how worse it must be when the offenders are actively trying to erase the history. And on top of that, someone who is from that country makes what is at best a tactless reference and only has been giving non apologies and saying it was an accident. I wouldn't have known about this or even looked into it if it weren't for the lovely people at Xiaohongshu. And as disturbing as it was for me to read and research, I am glad I was educated on this subject. I did really think it was an interesting thing to look into, like looking into a side of the Second World War that I was never told. And I do hope that you also learned something from this video. Personally, I love Japan and its culture. I still love it. But don't let this make you think that I will be ignorant to its vile past. And I really think it should be called out. And personally, I think that My Hero fans should take the same approach. You can like it, but you shouldn't have to make excuses like this to enjoy it. Like, just accept that some creators are shit people and move on. Just accept that there are people who don't like it and have valid reasons to not like it. And that's all I have to say really. Bye.